on Facebook, and I'm waiting for Aman.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. This is Paul Siegel. Welcome to another Meet the Gurus. Meet the Gurus is dedicated to business, technology, entrepreneurship, and a variety of other things, and seeing how those have all converged in the world we live in today. Today we have Reuven Lerner with us to talk about Python and related subjects. Welcome, Reuven. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Paul. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, so Reuven, just before we jump in, everyone would like to know a little about you, how you got into the world of Python and technology, frankly even take us back, hopefully not to the moment of your birth, but shortly thereafter. How did you get inspiration for technology? What made you enter this whole field?
So basically, when I was in elementary school, I had double vision. And the eye doctor suggested that we get what was then a state-of-the-art Atari video game system that would help to focus my eyes, because I certainly wasn't going to do the exercises that he was prescribing for me. And so we got the Atari, and I played with it like all good little boys do. And my parents got a cartridge for basic programming. And I got super excited by it. They gave me a present to go to a local computer store for my, I think it was 9th birthday, to learn programming. And it was me and a bunch of 40 and 50-year-olds who seemed at the time to be very, very old, who were learning programming to help their businesses. Mm-hmm. And, me learning it for fun. And one thing led to another, and I ended up going to MIT and studying computer science there, working on the newspaper where we set up one of the first websites in the world. And I've been doing programming training and programming consulting and mostly training for the last number of years. I've been using Python for close to 30 and teaching it for about 20 at this point.
So you really, you were there at the beginning and now have seen the, well, I wouldn't say the full life cycle evolution of this, because I think from what it seems to me, we're at the very beginning. I've been involved in IT, technology, information technology since the mid-90s, and everyone thinks that, seen it, done it, been there, done that, but it seems in the world of Python, while now it's become the word and the technology du jour, it still probably has a lot longer legs in it. Would you agree with that?
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. Look, Python has been around for a while, but it took a while for it to really find its sweet spot. Mm-hmm. In that, basically, I've always said Python is the perfect language for an age in which people are expensive and computers are cheap. Mm. And that's basically what we're seeing now, that the bottleneck in most companies is not writing the software. It's not even the execution speed of the software. It's how well can people debug it, how well can they maintain it, because that's your real corporate cost. Right. And so Python might not execute fast, but boy, oh boy, you can write it fast and you can maintain it easily as well. And that's what people are seeing nowadays, the big benefit.
And also, I mean, in terms of, where Excel has gone and Python is taking it, obviously their, ease of use, right, as you described, is vital to this, as well as the ease of understanding how to learn the product, both from a basics, but then obviously there's many more things you can build on that.
Look, one of the nice things about Python, I often say it's like the Esperanto of programming languages. Mm-hmm. That Esperanto's sort of claim to fame is that it's very consistent. And once you learn a rule, then it just sort of sticks with it. So right. All nouns work the same, all verbs work the same. And the same way Python, once you learn some of the core syntax and the way it works, everything else in the language works the same way. And so every lesson you learn, every new thing you learn, helps you understand everything more. And that has led to certainly its popularity. It's just exploding now in popularity, especially in the world of data science, but not only. And if you have to learn something new in Python, okay, you download it, you install it, and you're like, oh, this works like everything else I've seen before. That's right. Pretty great.
Right. And so it's really fundamental building blocks that enable you to build something pretty quickly and then extend it. But Python is not just merely used as a fundamentals tool, obviously. This is used for some of the most sophisticated data analysis and visualization in the world. Would you agree with that? Is that a fair statement?
Oh yeah. No, first of all, just in terms of sheer numbers, survey after survey shows that Python is the leading language for data science and machine learning out there. It's also used in DevOps. It's also used in web services. It's also used in all sorts of different things. Basically everything except for now mobile. And you've got companies like Pinterest and Instagram and the Washington Post and so on and so forth. Basically, you name a company, right, and they are using Python for everything from their servers to their testing. I have some companies that I work with where they test, their hardware products using Python, which you would never expect. Like, they have nothing to do with Python. They're not even a software company, but because they can ramp up lots of Python machines and test things en masse, that's what they do.
What are the fundamental limitations? Before we jump into some examples, what are some of the fundamental limitations? If you're looking at Python and you're new to this and you're thinking, what languages do I need to learn? What are the best things for me to see the future? Where do I see the potential limitations? Where would in the future for Python, or do you see any?
Look, there are a few limitations right now. One is execution speed, no doubt about it. It doesn't run as fast as some other languages, and I've often claimed that this is a matter of funding. JavaScript, which is a similar kind of language in many ways, different syntax, but basically it was horribly slow until Google came and hired away a huge number of researchers in programming languages, gave them $1 gazillion and said, make this fast. And what do you know? That does it. So if someone were to do that for Python, I have no doubt it would run faster. And there's actually an alternative version of Python known as PyPy, which has proven that you can have a just-in-time compiler that runs sometimes 80 times faster.
Right.
The other thing is the mobile, right? We all have mobile phones, right? We all see applications. That's where the world is going. And Python has some solutions for that, but they're not that amazing just yet. Okay. And I think that's going to take a little while to develop as well. But other than that, boy, oh boy, it's like being on a rocket ship. I never imagined when I learned Python, from the man pages 30 years ago, that it would be looking like this nowadays.
So when you're set, just let me know and we'll jump in to share your screen. Tell me when you're ready, and then let's jump into some examples and let people see the master at work.
Sure thing. Yeah, I'm all set. So let me do some.
No pressure in that introduction.
All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to...
There you go. Okay, we're good.
All right. So I'm currently sharing my screen on what's known as the Jupyter Notebook. And Jupyter Notebook is a very commonly used, it's not an IDE, it's not an editor. I call it my Python laboratory, because I can do lots of little experiments in it. It has to be extraordinarily popular in the world of data science, but not only, I use it all by teaching. I use it because basically I can work on my computer and then automatically synchronize it to a repo on GitHub so my students can keep up with what I'm doing. So, in fact, anyone watching now, you can just go, and this will be around after the webinar as well. If you go to github.com/Reuven Starweaver Python webinar, you'll see this and my Jupyter Notebook updating basically in almost real time, about every 1 or 2 minutes. And you can take a look there and render what I've got. And I used to tell people that there were about 1 million Jupyter Notebooks publicly available on GitHub. And it turns out that I was off by more than a factor of 10. There are more than 10 million publicly available Jupyter Notebook documents that people are using to share data science, share analysis, share programs. It's an extraordinary set of programs that work together to give you this illusion of running Python in your browser, even though it's really running on a back-end server. So what I want to do is show you a few little examples of exercises that I use in my courses. I'm a big fan of exercises. I mean, I wrote a book full of Python exercises. It's the only way that you're really going to learn. And I often make the analogy of learning a programming language is like learning a human language, learning a foreign language. That you just have to keep practicing and practicing and making mistakes, and you will end up with a perhaps funny-sounding foreign accent, but that doesn't mean that you can't use the language. It doesn't mean that's not practical. Right. And so practicing is a really important thing. So what I want to show is, first of all, one of my favorite examples of an exercise, which is Pig Latin. All right, Pig Latin, for those of you unfamiliar with 8-year-olds in America, basically it's a sort of secret language. And it's secret because children forget that their parents were once children. And the rules are actually pretty simple. So if the word, and this is like to translate from English. So if we're translating from English into Pig Latin. So if the English word starts with a vowel, right, that's A, E, I, O, or U, let's not argue about why here, then add way. But if the word starts with, or let's just say, otherwise, let's move the first letter to the end and then add AY. Okay, sounds pretty simple. So how do we do this in Python? Well, first of all, I've got to get a word from the user. So I'm going to say word equals input, enter a word. I'm just going to get rid of the white space at the beginning and end in case people are going to try to mess with me a little bit. All right, now what? Well, I need to check, is that first letter a vowel? Now, the way you might think about this, if you experience in any sort of programming language, is, well, I'm going to do a lot of if this or this or this or this. And you could say if word 0 equals A, or word 0 equals E, or word 0 equals I, or word 0 equals O, or word 0 equals U. Now, this is a fantastic way to program if you're charging by the hour. But this is really not the sort of way that you want to be doing things if you're writing typed code. Fortunately, Python strings are sequences. And as a sequence, we can actually play all sorts of games with them, pretending they're sort of list or array or other thing. So I can actually say if word 0, the first letter in AIU, just search inside of a string. And if that's the case, then I'll say, well, print word plus way. What about other cases? Well, in other cases, I want to move the first letter to the end. The only problem is strings in Python are immutable. You cannot actually change a string in Python. So what we're going to have to do is build a new string based on the existing string. And what we want to do is take everything but the first letter, and then the first letter, and then AY. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say print word from the index 1, which is the second letter, to the end, plus word 0, plus AY. And we've done it. So now if I say, elephant, that's elephant away. And if I want to say here, like table away, or able to, right? I can, even get fancier if I want to do papaya, one of my favorite examples, right? That is, as we all know in Pig Latin, papaya pay. And so basically what we've done is we've created this little translation program. Obviously, no one's going to seriously do any work in Pig Latin, right? That's not an in-demand language at the UN, I'm guessing. At the same time, this shows that we can manipulate strings, we can do all sorts of searches, and we can do it in a very compact way. And I think even someone who doesn't know Python well, but has a general sense of programming, can look at it and say, yeah, I know what's going on here. All right, so this sort of Pig Latin exercise, I just love doing it, and it provides us with a chance to see how strings work.
That's fantastic.
So now that we've done that, let's now move up to the lit bit. What's that?
I said that's fantastic. It's a very clear illustration.
Oh, sorry. All right. Excellent. Well, now let's move up to the big leagues. And now we're going to do a Pig Latin sentence. Now I don't want to get a word from the user. Now I want to translate an entire sentence. Now, it's not really going to be a sentence, right? No punctuation and no capitals, right? Let's just make it a little easier on me. I'm working in real time here. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's take our original code. I'm going to take this code here, and how can I change it to do what I want? Well, the first thing I have to do is change the prompt, right? Enter a sentence. And then I can say here sentence, because obviously, I want the variable name to match up, right? Well, what I'd like to do is actually perform what I just did, but I want to do it on each word. In other words, what I want to do is break the sentence apart into individual words and execute this translation on each part. Well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say here, let's just do here, one word in sentence split. And we're done. Because what's going to happen? We're going to get a sentence from the user. We're going to break that sentence apart, and then we can run a for loop on it, one word at a time. And then what we can do is if I say here, this is a test. Now it's translating each of the words there. Now you might quibble and say, wait a second, it's printing each of these words in a separate line. Okay, true enough. So I'll just add a little fanciness here. I'll say, hey, print, when you're done printing something, just add a space. Don't actually add a new line. And now if I say this is a test, oh, well, actually, I should have said here, oh, that was basically in the wrong place. That was my fault, not Python's. This is a test. And there you go. Now I'm able to translate an entire sentence. Pretty snazzy. You know what? Let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up into a function. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say, let's take Pig Latin function. So now I'm going to, now this is not going to be very different. This is like a thing that we're going to do. So I'm going to say here, def PL sentence. All right. So now what am I going to do here? I'm going to take here sentence, and we'll say here sentence. And then I'm going to say ba, 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 ba. But actually, I want to return the Pig Latin sentence. Pig Latin, I get a string, and I want to return a string. So I'm going to say output equals, I'm actually going to use a list, not a string. And now, watch what I'm going to do. Now I'm not going to say we're going to print it. Instead, we're going to say output append of this thing. Meaning I'm going to take each word in the sentence, I'm going to split it up, and then I'm going to go through each word just as before, but instead of printing, I'm going to append it to my output list. So I'm going to say output append, and then we'll do this here. And now I can just say return output. Wait, I don't want to return a list. I want to return a string. So we'll say space joined output, meaning I create a list that's empty. I go through the input sentence one word at a time, and then I take that list and I join it together. Will this work? Let's find out. PL sentence of this is another interesting example. Oops. And look at that. It managed to do it. So now we've turned what was originally just a one-word thing into a sentence thing, and the sentence thing into a function that we can run. Well, where are we going to run it? Well, maybe I should find a text file and I should run it on something. So I'm just going to grab, here, hold on just a moment here. I'm going to grab an old column of mine from Linux Journal. Why is this not working here? Oh, there we go. Hold on just a moment. Come on. All right, never mind. There we go. Something's broken. Okay. All right, if it takes too long, I'm just going to forget it. Forget. Okay. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a file here. Something is sticking on my system here. That's kind of funny. Oh, let's just kill off something here. I don't know what's making it slow. It'd be great to blame Zoom, right? But I'm not going to be that cruel. All right, there we go. Hopefully now it'll jump back to life. Huh, this is very weird. All right, let's kill off one or two other things here. Sorry, I've not had this happen ever.
Part of the production process of real education. Things happen.
All right, let's see now. Now it should be so weird. What the heck is going on? All right, let's try. Really a little at a loss here. All right, now come on. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're back. Excellent. So I'm just going to create a quick file here that we can use. So say with open, let's say my text file.txt for writing as output. I'm going to say here output write, and I'll say here this is an amazing new sentence, and we'll say here I'm just going to put a few like ridiculous things in here. All right, and right, this is a demo for the entire world to see. And then we'll say here, right, so far, no problems at all on the technical front. All right, font. All right, so I've written this file now. This is just like showing you how I can write a file. So now what I want to do is I want to actually apply this function to the entire file. Well, how can I do that? Well, what I can do is I can say here, for one line in open my text file txt. And when you open a file for reading in Python, you're actually creating what's called an iterator object, or the file is an iterator object, meaning we are going to automatically get this file one line at a time. I'm going to say print one line. Great. Well, you know what I want to do? I don't want to print the one line. I want to say, watch what we're going to do here, PL sentence of one line. And look at that. Now we have actually translated all of the lines in this file. So what we've done is taken a very simple idea of doing this one-word translation. We've done it for a sentence. We've turned it into a function. Now we can apply this function to any old text file we might want. In fact, I could even go so far as to have a list of text files and go through them one at a time. So this is the sort of amazing thing that we can do. But let's do one or two other sort of cool and amazing things as well. So this is nice, but what if I want to create a list based on this, right? I don't want to actually just print it on the screen. I want to get a list. So I could do it this way. I could say here for one line in open my text file.txt. And then I could say here like, sentences, let's say translation equals a list. And then I can say here, well, we're going to say translations append of PL sentence of one line. And then sure enough, if we look at translations, what do we have? the list of translated things. That's fine. When I look at code like this, I have a phrase that I like to use in my courses, which is, unfortunately, this works. And by that I mean, yes, it technically did exactly what we wanted, but there is a better way, and what we would call a more Pythonic way to do that. And what I mean by that is a for loop typically means that we're going to be executing something. We're going to be issuing a command after command after command. And yeah, I can append to a list. But what I can also use is something known as a list comprehension. And a list comprehension takes an iterable object and creates a list based on it. So if your goal is to create a list, you're going to use a list comprehension. Now, I will warn you folks that list comprehensions are among the most among the weirdest and hardest to understand parts of Python syntax. But once you master them, and there's a bit of a learning curve, but once you master them, you can do magical things almost. For example, I can do this. I can say key else sentence, one line, for one line, in open my text file.txt. And there we go. Now I've got these lists. I've created a list, or I have a list, based on that. So what I'm doing is I'm iterating here over the file, and I'm simply saying, hey, create a list based on this output. Now, I'm going to give one more example, and then I think I'll open it up to questions and comments and so forth. I'm not sure exactly how much time we have left. But basically, list comprehensions are one of my favorite things because they allow you to so nicely work with files and other complex data structures. So here's a cool thing we can do. Those of you watching might be familiar with the Unix etc password file. Etc password is where all the usernames and passwords are stored on Unix. So what I can do is I can say something like this. I can say one line for one line in open etc password. Hold on. And what do I get? I get the entire password file, one line at a time in a list. So I've turned it into a list. Okay, we can do that. But basically, I don't want to do that. I want to actually get, can I get the usernames on the system in a list? Well, let's see. The usernames are here. Those of you not familiar with etc password, the file is structured as a bunch of records. Each line is a separate record, and that record is broken into fields. And so on each of these lines with colons, that first field, nobody here, is a username. Root is a username. So what I can do is I can say, oh, each line that I get from the file, I'm going to do a split on colon. I'm going to turn it into a list. And then I'm going to grab that first element there, 0. And look what I get. I get all the usernames. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, wait. I'm getting the usernames, but I also get all this junk. Luckily, Apple has been, is on my side here, and they are providing me with the comments at etc password for pedagogical purposes. Thank you, Tim Cook. So basically, how can I do this? How can I get rid of these comments and then get the usernames? I'll just add a condition. If not, one line starts with colon, meaning go through this file one line at a time. If the line does not start with a hash mark, then and only then take the line, split into fields with colon, and grab the first thing there. And guess what we get? A list of users. So we actually can play with these things in all sorts of different ways. And this is, of course, the tip of the iceberg. But once you start to see how you can go through complex data structures, read things in, and we haven't even started to talk about iterators, generators, classes, the whole business. This is sort of what you can do with just a few days of Python instruction. And people are doing pretty amazing things with this. How are we doing on time? Since I killed off everything else on my computer, Paul.
That's very good. If you stop sharing your screen, we can move on.
Fantastic. So I will stop sharing. I'll press the stop share button. There we go.
Okay. So there we go. Thank you, Reuven. That was pretty excellent distillation of how to get something that is a child's game and make it an interesting programming exercise. That was quite fantastic. I question, how does one come up with such interesting examples besides coming to one of your classes? You've used Pig Latin as an example, and obviously it's a great illustration of Python, I think, and also creating an exercise. Do you have any other idea generating tools for someone to go out and say, look, I want to come up with some other exercises of my own, so they can practice before they even came to one of your classes? Is there some other tool that you use, or some thoughts about that?
Look, so there are a few different sort of types of exercises out there. One of my favorite things to do is simulate a built-in thing that already exists in Python. So I often ask people to write a function that sums numbers. Why? There's already a sum function that comes with Python. Yeah, but if you have to do it yourself, then you have to start thinking about how to do it. Similarly, I often have them recreate the WC word count program that comes with Unix. Again, not because they're going to use it in production, but because, first of all, it gets to the thing, and second of all, they know what the end point is. And so they can then sort of visualize it, and they're like, wow, this took 10 lines. I can't believe it.
Right.
Except, believe it. But I'm always looking, like, when I'm trying to do exercise, I'm trying to get, like, things that are sort of obvious and clear and sort of things people would understand in the real world, and then sort of hook that together with concepts in the language. And I'll tell you, I'm always experimenting. Like, just about every class that I do, I'm like, let me try this. And often it's a variation on something I've done before. And sometimes it'll go great, and sometimes, not often, right? Sometimes it'll fall flat. And then I'm like, oh, never do that again. The analogy I often make is to like a stand-up comedian, where when you see them, it's after they've gone through a lot of iterations of those jokes, so they're actually funny. So my sort of professional advantage is, like, I teach Python every day, so I go through a lot of iterations and can weed out the junk hopefully sooner than later.
Right. No, it's a fascinating idea, and so you look at the functions within Python that already exist and leverage those. That's point number one. Point number two is obviously have a lot of experience like you do as in terms of trying things out. One of the things I saw done, and not related to Python particularly, was a Power BI demonstration where someone had pulled information off public sources like Wikipedia, like the Olympic history, the Olympic history of Olympic results. I mean, there's so much data out there that if you're interested in sports or art or this, that, and the other things, there are databases that exist that I would imagine can serve as some good source of exercise material.
Oh my God, yes. So one that I love to use when I'm teaching pandas data analysis is the New York City taxi data. That like when you get into a taxi nowadays in New York, they're recording where you were picked up, where you dropped off, when, how you paid, how much you tipped. And so you can say, like, is there a correlation between how far people went and how much they paid? Spoiler alert, yes. Is there a correlation between how much they paid and how many people were in the taxi? No, not at all. So if I'm a taxi driver who's moonlighting as a data scientist, as we know they all are, then if I've done this analysis, I know it doesn't matter whether I go to the left or the right, to the one person or the six people. I'm going to get the same amount of money.
Right. Very interesting. Yeah, and there's so many different things. I always say that we try to think of things in both the domain, data science, for example, and the business sector. So, for example, taxis, transportation, entertainment. If you're looking for a job in the entertainment field, you probably don't want to do the taxi example. But if you want to get a job in the entertainment world and you want to demonstrate your skills in Python or others, you might want to look at YouTube data. You might want to look at the history of the film industry or something or cartoons or whatever you're interested in. So it's always that kind of combination, and you've brought up some phenomenal examples, both for fun, Pig Latin, for real world applications, and I think it's really instrumental, and I really appreciate your time to have taken to do this. And obviously you're a true guru in the field, and appreciate having demonstrated some of these things for people, and we'll have you back as soon as possible. So I appreciate all this and your effort today.
My great pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on. Great to talk to you about this.